Welcome, everybody.
Let's do this. Feels like, it's like very bright. We hit a bit of the 5 p.m. curse, but thank you everyone for being here on the last day of the expo. We're going to be talking about VMware workloads and how we move them to Azure. I was telling Scott, it's funny because I started at Microsoft being the VMware compete guy. And so finding ourselves tonight how we move these VMware workloads to Azure. I'm Christophe Herrbach. I lead a product in Azure called the Azure VMware Solution, AVS. Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, advanced slides. So hey everyone, I'm Scott Gruenemeier. I'm a principal solution engineer. I work out in the field and I've been working with AVS since it was a super secret squirrel where they had to sign my name in blood. You can't talk about this. It was like 7 years ago or so. But back in the day, I used to be the guy running around going, hey, Hyper-V is much cooler than VMware and System Center is much cooler. That conversation didn't go as well as I had hoped back then, but I'm actually really glad it didn't because today I'm being very successful in helping make all of my customers successful with Azure VMware Solution. It's the least friction way for VMware customers to get into the cloud.
Thank you. Well, so this is going to be the session, right? We want to talk to you about VMware Solution, the Azure VMware Solution, what it does, why it is a great solution to move these VMware workloads to Azure, and how we would be helping you to do that. And we have a few demos to show you how it works exactly. The Azure VMware Solution, like Scott said, we've been launching that solution in the market for like 5 to 7 years, right?
Yep.
Today it has about 1,000 customers. We have very, very large workloads with big banks have trusted us to bring their VMware workloads to Azure, big insurance companies. We are running usually workloads in the thousands of VMs to give you an idea of like the kind of workload and mission critical applications we run on that service. I think the largest customers has probably 17,000 VMs in AVS. It is what we call a fully managed service. So when you bring your workloads to AVS, we give you the full stack of VMware product offering. They're called the VCF, the VMware Cloud Foundation. That includes like ESXi and vSphere and vCenter and NSX and vSAN and HCX. So we offer and support the whole package, and we deliver that as a first-party Microsoft product, which means that we support this solution. We deploy the infrastructure, we deploy the hypervisor, we deploy the SDDCs, and our customers get to consume that as a service. Good? Anything you want to add? No, please feel free to jump in. And so, just to tie back with the keynote and the story around agentic migration and modernization, right? We see that our customers are using AVS in a journey to modernize their workloads towards Azure, right? And so some of our customers, they're moving their workloads to AVS, and they're happy to leave the workload running on a VMware platform within Azure. And our other customers are using AVS as a stepping stone to move these workloads like frictionless or with less friction to Azure, and then modernize from there, right?
Yeah.
And it's a bit of the story we want to tell today is why this is a great solution to modernize at your own pace with much better efficiency than doing it from on-prem.
Yeah, so it turns out that trying to modernize your applications, especially if you have a lot, like 1,000 VMs, 2,000, 5,000 VMs, and the number of applications to go along with it is difficult. So unless you have a army of developers, which not everyone does, it can take a long time to do that direct modernization. And think about it, how many databases do you have on a single database server? I have a lot of customers that have 50, 100 plus databases on a single database server. And then how do you tease all that out with the application tier, logic tier, whatever, how many your application architecture is. And it turns out that doing direct modernization of an application from on-prem looks like a waterfall methodology in a lot of cases. So if we take your, especially if you're an older legacy environment, which a lot of our customers are, the spaghetti monster mess. Who here has seen a spaghetti monster mess in your environment? Nobody? You all run clean, super pristine, perfect IT shops? Awesome. I want to come and visit. But if you're like me and I work with a lot of governments and stuff's been accreting over 20 plus years, we bear hug the spaghetti monster mess. We put it in the cloud, and then you've got my SQL Server. It's got 100 databases sitting on there. Guess what? I can start taking those databases or the whole database server, move it to Azure SQL Managed Instance. The rest of the application is going to work awesome because it's next door, 1 millisecond away from that Azure SQL Managed Instance to the logic tier, app tier. And so you've done that modernization, and your end user customers had no idea it happened. And you get to go to your CIO, CTO, and high five. In fact, you're going to probably get tendonitis. We got to all stretch from high fiving so much because it becomes so much easier to do that modernization. And then, with Azure Migrate, we showed the app modernization agent to help advise with that. And so again, if you don't have a ton of developers or your workforce is just learning the cloud, it can really help you start off and get pointed in the right direction to get there.
So it starts with the value of the cloud for these VMware workloads, right? And how fast can you go and capture that value on this migration journey? Moving 1,000 plus VMs workload to AVS today has taken on average to our customers 4 to 6 months from the start of the migration to running operations on that workload, which is probably 5-6 times faster than what it would take to move this workload and modernize it to a classic Azure IaaS infrastructure, right? And so immediately the value of doing this is on day 0 of that first day of running the workload on AVS, you tap into a lot of these cloud value props, right? You are disaggregating from your hardware. You don't need to refresh hardware, buy new hardware, because you run on the service that on the infrastructure we provide for you. The security that you have access for these workloads is behind our Azure gateways. So you get Azure security. Immediately you can start the easy migration, if you have a SQL database, Scott, I'm stealing your examples.
Yeah, thanks.
But if
file
you have,
shares,
right,
going on.
a SQL database running on a VM, it's super easy to modernize from AVS to a Azure IaaS SQL instance, right? The AVS solution is also very integrated with our first-party storage solution, so you can start moving workloads from vSAN to a Azure NetApp Files or Azure Elastic-SAN, right? And so very, very soon in the process, you're able to get that value from bringing that workload to a platform like AVS, where you bring the workload fast, and immediately you get to tap into these cloud semantics. Right? And I also almost talked about that slide already. I look at that. Right?
So there's a lot of reasons to move, but again, it's that speed of getting there. And that gives you a lot of capability. And then, so once you move, some or all of your VMware estate up, again, it's that focus on modernization, adding security, access to analytics, access to AI, and we'll get that in the demo. Because here's the thing, is proximity matters, right? So if you can take advantage of AI on-prem today, right? But you got to ship your data up. If your applications and your data are already up there, it makes it that much easier to take advantage of it. And so again, it's bringing agility to IT here so that you have access to all 200 plus solutions in Azure in addition to your VMware estate. So when you get asked, hey, I need to do this new initiative, how am I going to do that? Instead of going out and doing a tool acquisition search, right? You have all your data, all your applications already in the cloud. You have all of our marketplace solutions. You have all of our Azure native solutions. Again, it's that giving you that flexibility, the elasticity to implement that, and then adding security on top of that. One of my customers, Washington Metro Transit Agency, they do the trains in DC. I don't know if anyone knows U.S. government functions out of Washington, D.C. I don't know if function's the right word, but anyway, if the trains get snarled, if those systems go down, certain very important people become upset. And so it's mission critical, right? So we moved all their mission critical systems to Azure VMware Solution in Azure to gain uptime, resilience, high availability, and disaster recovery. But we also surrounded that with cybersecurity. We added WAF, we added inspection, we added agents on their Defender for Cloud. Day one of production operations, we were able to capture folks trying to do cross-site scripting attacks through WAF. Now you'll say that's simple, we ought to do that, but they weren't able to see that with their previous setup before. So again, we were surrounded with security, added HA and DR, and they were very happy, and that high-risk workload has been working perfectly for a couple of years now.
Right. One other question we have often from our customers about AVS is how does it like live side to side, play along with Azure IaaS, right? And there are two destinations for VMware workloads to come to Azure. The way we usually see this is you want to choose the path that has less friction for you to bring that workload, because the faster you are in Azure, the faster you tap into the benefits of being in Azure, as Scott just said, right? And so what we recommend, if you're using Hyper-V on-prem, move to Azure IaaS, right? If you're using Nutanix on-prem, you move to our Nutanix on Azure offer. The VMware workloads, AVS is probably the best fit initially when you move them. They don't have to stay there forever, as I said, right? Like we have, I would say 50% of the AVS customers today have a strategy that says, I would love to continue modernization once I'm on AVS. Whatever that means to the customer, right? Sometimes it's disaggregation of storage. Sometimes it's completely move out of the Broadcom ecosystem, VMware ecosystem, and come to a full Azure platform as a service experience, right?
Or containers, right. Pick your modernization platform.
The message here that I think, at least for this slide, is a key message is the notion of migration, then modernization, right? And with modernization as the North Star, but like migrating in a easier way, your VMware workloads to a solution like AVS gets you all that value, right? You wanted to add something, sir?
Yeah, and then really what we're talking about here is accelerating your cloud strategy, because a lot of folks have told me, hey, I never want to put a VM in the cloud. That feels like failure. And conversely, and again, this is really targeted at customers that have big legacy environments, big VMware environments. The fastest way to start getting out of that, again, is to pick it up and move it all at once. Because teasing apart all those dependencies on premises, especially if you haven't been following, strict ITIL and app catalog and all that good stuff, is extremely difficult. I know. I've worked in government for years. I worked in banking for years. I worked in startups, and all of those had those similar challenges.
So that is a view. I'll just build it right now. But that is a view of that journey that AVS customers go through, right? When it comes to modernizing their workloads to Azure, right? The first step is they would bring that workload to AVS. They would stabilize the migration, make sure that they can run their mission critical application on the platform, right? And from then, initiate that modernization journey from that AVS stamp they deployed to, right? They can start optimizing for maximum value, which means like free up resources, right? And so since AVS is a service, there's a lot of operation value that Microsoft delivers through the service that doesn't necessarily have to be done by the folks that used to do that on-prem on your VMware deployment on-prem, right? And then what I see most customers do is they start to cloudify their workload by doing this like storage disaggregation, right? And so we have two storage solutions that are tightly integrated with AVS. This is the Azure NetApp Files, the ANF service, and then the Elastic SAN, which is a service that GA'd for AVS about 6 months ago.
Yep.
And so we've spent a lot of engineering effort to really optimize the performance, the integration with these services, so customers can move workloads or data to these storage services pretty fast as soon as they start using AVS. Right? And then that modernization can continue, right? You heard the announcement that we have now, we are offering a agentic model to move or assist the migration of workloads into Azure. And so that's a great way to start building like the modernization pipeline of how you are going to continue to modernize whatever you brought to AVS towards wherever you want to take it, right? And so for some customers, that modernization journey stops at some point, and other customers find value in moving their database to a container service in AKS, right? Or like transforming a compute workload and move that to a IaaS system, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, really the thing to think about here though is, you know, if you're feeling stuck, this is a way to unstick with getting to the cloud. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
You want to, yeah.
Yeah, here, let me. So, you know, there's a lot of targets in Azure for, you know, where you can move it to. We have IaaS, PaaS solutions, container solutions, and then even on-premises solutions. We have Arc, and Arc is a really key topic here. And we'll talk about, oh, sorry, I moved ahead a little too fast there. So with Arc, we're able to instrument your VMs, whether they live on premises, they live in another cloud, or they live in Azure VMware Solutions. They show up in the Azure portal and can consume Azure services such as Azure Update Manager, Defender for Servers, you know, Azure Monitor, and get, you know, a single, you know, pane of glass. I know that's a very abused term out there, but it gives a lot of value, including getting extended security updates when we move through that. So there's a lot of destinations we work there, but really when we build on AVS, again, I can't stress enough, you're next to all of our AI services in the cloud. And so with being next to all those AI services, and we'll show this in the demo, it's really easy to take your applications that are in flight today and extend their capabilities with them without having to do, you know, crazy database syncs or, you know, export imports in, because again, all your data or your database is sitting right there live, running in their legacy platform today, and you can add on to that. Christophe, do you want to talk about CSX?
Well, CSX is just a good example of a customer of AVS that had a fairly complex landscape, right? And how they've been able to do the analysis of what it would take to move that landscape to AVS, use our toolings. So in Azure Migrate, you have a lot of TCO assessment tools I would recommend to consult, right? And
yep.
that would do the assessment of what it would take to migrate this workload, how to optimize the number of VMs you have on-prem into the number of nodes in AVS that it would take to run that estate. These guys have been able to do that, I think,
very quickly.
The slide doesn't mention how fast they've been able to do that.
Yeah, but it took them less than, less than 6 months. But then the key fact here is they were able to extend their existing applications with Azure Machine Learning to do predictive maintenance, right? Much easier than trying to ship all the data up and do the same analysis, right? So this is a key example of the customer actually doing that exact same thing. So everything we've talked about here today, we've seen with real customers. Like this is actually doable by you and or your customers. So let's talk about AVS in action today. So one, it's the fastest solution to get to the cloud. I think we've hit that message home quite a bit here. So, you know, part of that could be, you know, your data centers closing. We've seen a bit of that. But another use case that we often see here is disaster recovery. So who here has a absolutely bulletproof, testable, 100% reliable disaster recovery solution that you'd bet your life on? Nice. One person, awesome. Again, want to come visit your shop. And do you feel like that your disaster recovery solution, you get a lot of value for the money that you spent out of that, or do you wish it would cost less? That's another thing that I often get. So in the cloud with disaster recovery, we offer a pilot light model where you don't have to have all the hosts running at the same time, right? Because you can replicate your VMs, your VMDKs to storage in the cloud, and then spin up, just have a pilot light model, just enough nodes of AVS running there to have all the base networking and operations in place, and then spin up those nodes on demand in the case of a disaster, so you're not paying for that compute while there's no disaster actually occurring. So, you know, there's a lot of really good use cases outside that fast modernization. Disaster recovery is absolutely one of them. Now, who here is, looked at this and said, is it separate? Is this VMware running on top of Hyper-V? No, right? It's a bare metal solution. It's running full VCF. We're running VCF 8 now. We're going to get to VCF 9 shortly somewhere.
Yeah.
In the near future. Yeah. You heard it here first. So it's fully validated VCF by VMware in partnership with VMware, but it's owned and operated by Microsoft. In fact, the buck stops with Christophe. So he's the person who helped making this happen. It's engineered by us at Microsoft. It's supported by us and Microsoft. There's no finger pointing going, oh, it's VMware, oh, it's someone else. Nope. When you put your workloads in Azure VMware Solution, it's all us. Now, the thing is again, you get to take advantage of all of our great Azure services out there, but also our partner services out there like Pure, Jetstream, Zerto, Horizon out there. So again, there's many more partner services that we're going to talk about. So whatever your backup service you're using today, you're going to keep using that same backup service. If you're using, Zerto for disaster recovery, again, you can keep using that because again, it's just a VMware ecosystem today.
It's like, sorry to interrupt. We did recognize that the strength of a solid VMware implementation on-prem is also in the ecosystem of solutions that surrounds VMware, right?
Yes.
Whether it's Veeam and Commvault or Pure Storage or HP Zerto, right? And so it's super important for us to replicate that ecosystem around AVS. So again, the spirit is trying to remove friction as much as possible to allow these workloads to move to Azure fast so that you can tap into the value of Azure from as fast as possible from day zero. And so we have a lot of these integration and partnerships built with these partners to replicate that ecosystem, right?
Absolutely. So we're meeting you where you're at, so then you can grow your skills and your people and your business into the cloud. Mm-hmm. Now, not only that, we're offering it as VMware as a service, meaning you don't need a rack, stack, burn in, maintain VMware, vSphere, vSAN, NSX, HCX. We take care of all of that for you, right? All of that is time put back in your pocket that you can put towards that backlog of tasks that have been sitting on your plate. Now, this next thing is really, I think, cool is that, hey, what if one of your hosts becomes unhealthy? Do you need to go out and buy hosts and have them sitting waiting in the wings to replace it? Nope. Guess what? We do that for you for free. You're like, free? That sounds awesome, because it is. So we automatically detect if one of your hosts becomes degraded, we'll move those VMs over to the healthy host and automatically slot in a new host without you having to have paid and provision it. Now, some of you may have seasonal workloads or have a surprise workload happen, and all of a sudden you need more compute. What happens at that point? Well, you put in a PO, you send it to HP or Dell, and then it goes through the chain, and then it gets shipped in, and it gets racked and it's stacked, and that takes exactly, 3 hours? 4 hours? No? Okay. Well, in Azure VMware Solution, you can click a couple buttons, beep, boop, beep, boop. I wish the sound effects would be there, but they're not. And in a couple hours, that compute can be there, and you can pay for it by the hour if you want, or do a dedicated reservation to bring the cost down. But you can scale up and scale down that compute on demand, and that's really critical. And it's really hard to do in your own data center. Trust me, I've tried.
Last anecdote on the service is we also qualify and test from a security perspective.
Yes.
Every piece of software that comes from our partners from Broadcom before it's deployed on Azure. And so, because we are the function behind the support, right? And so we want to make sure that everything that is on the service is tested and qualified. We've been able to catch a few VMSAs, protect our customers from that. And I think security is also a big concern. Big priority, right?
So it's a fully locked down and vetted, great environment. So again, we're giving you the most secured and locked down version of VMware. Now, this is fully compatible with your VCF Plus subscription. So it's bring your own license model. So if you're on VCF today, it's great. You bring your key, you plug it in, and boom, you're running in the cloud. So it's fully portable with VCF. That's the promise that they brought when Broadcom changed the licensing model, and we're seeing it in action here as well. So again, it's all the same stack you're used to today. It's the most boring demo in the world because you're like, look, it's a vSphere. You're like, I've been staring at this for a decade. Cool. Now, we have a lot of different SKUs out there. But I think the really cool point here is with the AV64 is that Microsoft built its own hardware dedicated to just Azure VMware Solution, right? So we built hardware because the other ones are really Dell SKUs that we bought and we rack and stack and you're like, look, it's all Dell. No, because the rest of Azure is custom built racks and servers and blades out there. And we did the same thing with AVS with Gen 1, Gen 2 AV64.
I would go even further, in the cool aspect is not only this is our own hardware, but this is the same hardware platform that runs the rest of Azure, right?
Yes.
And so internally we call that the Azure Fleet, which is really the hardware estate that runs Azure. And so it's the same hardware that we've been able to deploy that hardware fast. We have lots of capacity for that hardware. We can like if you need more nodes, we can deploy more nodes in a matter of a few weeks. And so that really gives this cloud feel more than just a hosting feel that we had on the Dell SKUs, right?
Yeah, and when you say get more, no, we're talking rows and rows of compute in a few weeks, right? I mean, we're talking cloud scale, so it's really huge. Now, we have Gen 1 out there today, and it relies on ExpressRoute to connect into your existing ecosystem. So if you're familiar with Azure Landing Zones and how ExpressRoute works, it uses global reach to connect your ExpressRoute with an ExpressRoute that's provided, complementary as part of AVS. And that's been in play for 5+ years now. It's proven reliable and it works great. But you may say to yourself, there's got to be a better way. And there is. Right now we've introduced AVS Generation 2. And essentially it surfaces the networking in a standard Azure virtual network. Hooray! And it's rolling out to regions across the world. It's getting rolled out in phases because it is a big change, but it is really cool because again, all the same networking rules, NSGs, user-defined routes, all the same networking components will apply, in addition to using all of the VMware network components because there's a translation layer between the tool.
And Scott, I would say, because it has been originally when we kicked off AVS, right? It felt a bit like the odd duck,
a bolt-on,
where it was this little estate that was very exotic on its own hardware, on its own network, right? And now when you think of it with the Gen 2, it runs on Azure native hardware,
right?
It runs on Azure native networking in the VNet, right? It connects to all these native services, so we really have a solution that brings that VMware platform in an Azure way. Right?
Yeah, really service it as a first-class Azure service, which it's always been, but it's now even easier. And I know you have questions, but we got to roll. We'll be available afterwards and at the booth as well. So we are in 37 regions. This number keeps going up, right? Azure VMware Solution is one of the fastest growing services in all of Microsoft, even though it doesn't have the initials AI in it. So it's really great. And we talked about, it's got disaster recovery, we got data protection, we have all the partners that you know and love out there, and there's even more that work with it. These are just the big ones, the main ones out there. Like I said, we can extend.
And just to sorry again, I feel like I'm interrupting you all the time.
No, this is great.
I want to mention, because there's engineering work that went into integrating these partners with AVS, right? So they are just not playing into the ecosystem and commercially make themselves available to the service. But we worked with Zerto, we worked with Rubrik and Commvault to really build that integration between their solution and ours. So it runs the same way it runs on-prem, and it's optimized the same way it runs the same way it's optimized on-prem to really facilitate that adoption and day zero experience. Right?
Yeah, and it's really slick and smooth out there. Customers don't appreciate the amount of work we put into it. Again, this is not a third-party service offering bolt-on. This is a first-party Microsoft-owned and operated service that, it gets to our highest quality standards. All right, so we're going to talk about how Azure VMware Solutions deployed. We got a quick demo here. So let's make sure this plays. Yep, so we're going here. So in the Azure portal, you're going to go, and there's a couple requirements for doing a deployment of Azure VMware Solution. Most notably, you need to have allocated quota ahead of time. So not everyone can, you can't just go and deploy it on the spur of the moment, nor would you want to, because it's not cheap. It's not expensive. It's not like deploying, a couple megabytes of storage. But notably, you need a /22 IP range set up for the management plane. And I know it seems kind of big, but when you have that in there, all the management functions for vSphere, vSAN, NSX, HCX get deployed within that /22. You got to have your quota out there, and then you pick how much you want to deploy. 3 nodes is the minimum. So 3 AV36P or 3 AV64 in a Gen 2 deployment out there. So you put in your /22 CIDR block. That's going to be for the management plane of VMware in there. And again, there's some legal terms. You're going to have to pop in a product key that's not in this demo yet. That user experience, it's here or is it coming? The product key.
The product key should be within the next few weeks.
Yeah, so it'll be there. So it'll be in the demo. And then we kick off the deployment. That's it, folks. Right now, it's going to take 4 or 5 hours to fully deploy. But that's the total amount of work to get your initial cluster deployed for your first SDDC. I had trouble narrating because it's so fast. Now, so we're skipping forward to 4 or 5 hours, and we're looking out here, and we're saying, hey, this is our hello world workload with VMware. So you have access to vSphere and here, and you can look at all the dashboards. I mean, again, most boring demo in the world for VMware administrators because it looks just like your VMware on premises today. So, we're going through and showing, hey, it's set up, as part of the Azure cloud in there. Looking at, all your different resources within vSphere. And again, it's just, fairly standard out there and setting up, vMotion, within your ecosystem here. Yeah. So you can, again, move machines around within your SDDC. You can move them between SDDCs if you've got multiple regions stood up. And it's very, very fast. This is optimized hardware and optimal deployments, and it's the same every single time. So with Azure VMware Solution, again, we have extreme automation and very rigorous testing that goes into all these deployments and management. So again, when you deploy it, you can have confidence it's going to be the same and it's going to work every single time. So part of that is the migrate to modernize. So we have seamless innovation with Azure services. We talked about Azure SQL, Azure Files. Like if you have a Windows file share, that's another very common one out there. But again, there's 200 plus Azure services. By the time I give this presentation again, it'll probably be 300 plus services because we're adding more every day. All of them have AI in the initials going forward. That's I think a mandate from Satya, but I don't know. But part of this is that we're able to help you with your migration. We set up HCX to do that migration, and then once it's there, we have full networking between all of the rest of Azure's technologies. So if you want to take advantage of OpenAI, which we'll show you in a demo here shortly, you want to move those files to Azure Files. You want to take advantage of blob storage to reduce your storage costs. That's, disaggregating storage. When Christophe was talking about that, again, huge savings can be achieved by getting big blobs of data off a disk and moving it to blob storage for programmatic access, and then, potentially cool, cold, and archives storage for even reduced costs from there. Right. We talked about Arc services available through vSphere. It's a best practice when we do a migration. I say, hey, do you have Arc deployed today on premises? And you go, what's Arc? And I go, Arc is the way you turn your VM on premises or in Amazon or in Google or wherever it is, where it's a vSphere, Nutanix, Hyper-V, whatever, into an Azure VM that's able to consume Azure services. And Arc is a very lightweight agent, and it's essentially like if you're familiar with an Azure VM, it's the Azure Management Agent, same thing, but we've made it available everywhere. So it enables you to do inventory. It enables you to deploy Azure services out there, and you can deploy it through integration with vSphere, so you can target vSphere for deployment of Arc to all of your VMs very easily, very low risk, without a lot of administrative overhead out there. So we can do monitor, we can do Sentinel, we can do policy for controlling your VMs. So if you have VMs that aren't domain joined, and you're like, I wish I had group policy and I hate setting at local Windows policy, or I've got Linux out there and I'm not a super window wizard Linux admin, you can use Azure policy to control that instead.
And that's a big ask for customers who are running a VMware estate on-prem and running also a VMware estate in AVS, right?
Yeah.
Because either they move that VMware estate over time, or they have a business decision that says some of these workloads need to stay on-prem, some of the workloads need to move to Azure. And using Arc to just offer visibility through the Azure portal on the overall estate, that's where a lot of value has been driven as well.
Yeah. And if you have older Windows, older SQL, this is how you get the extended security updates. Extended security updates in Azure VMware Solution are free. That could save you a ton of money and increase your security. Now, speaking of security, right, we talked about surrounding with security here. So we're talking about identities. So we can use managed identities between AVS VMs with Arc, right, which is key. So instead of just doing network security to secure your resources in Azure, we can use managed identities, saying this VM is authorized to talk to, say, this Azure SQL service, right? Instead of just doing network security, we can do identity security with resources. Huge, mind-blowing, very difficult to do on-prem. We can do data protection, so we support key vaults. So you can do bring your own key encryption, very critical for highly regulated industries. We got network security across the board and a lot of tools for that. Threat detection, we got Defender for Cloud. We can, we have the largest threat detection network in the world. And we can, essentially instrument and monitor every single layer of Azure, whether it's a VM, the network, the storage, the SQL PaaS services. Again, we can look for that and secure it. And then we have security management with log analytics and Azure Monitor and Sentinel, so we can aggregate all that data together and then essentially bring that into Azure Security Copilot to give you security insights. Sorry, I'm moving fast here. I want to make sure we get all this great content in for you. So now we're going to...
The clock is ticking.
Yes. Demo. So, we talked about the promise of integration, and we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to migrate to AVS. Now we're going to talk about modernizing with that. So in our demo environment here today, what we're going to do is look at a traditional app running in Azure VMware Solution today, and we're going to integrate it with some OpenAI services to create a chat-like interface using OpenAI to control that interaction with the customer. The real magic around that is being able to do hybrid DNS, right? So you know with DNS, usually you're registering with Active Directory if you're a Windows customer or another DNS service. But think about it, you can't register your PaaS services with your on-prem DNS. That's not how that works. And so we have an infrastructure in Azure called hybrid DNS using a private DNS resolver where you can register your PaaS services and then create a conditional forwarder in your current DNS system that'll forward that DNS on a request to the Azure platform and then bring it to a private DNS zone for resolution and then point it back to your DNS server to provide a CNAME result so that your developers, your IT staff can resolve these Azure resources in your on-prem DNS, which is really cool, so that you can address, blob storage, Azure SQL, you name it, any type of Azure resource using private endpoints, meaning that all the networking is in a private network, even though it is a platform as a service, not a virtual machine. So as part of this demo here, we're creating a chatbot, and we'll play through this real quick. And go. All right. So this is a banking application. So it says show the balance of my account here. And so again, using a chatbot, utilizing OpenAI to do so, we're able to come in here. We're uploading a bank statement. And it says it successfully ingested and read that. And it says, how much do I need to pay on this? And it says, hey, I got to pay $93.50 from your account that has this current balance. It said, order it, go ahead and pay it. So went ahead and did so. And then, if you're in banking, please ignore all the security and privacy stuff that is missing. But this is a demo app. And then it says, what's my current balance after it's decremented that payment? And it shows that result. Again, demo app. And so really kind of the trick here is we used App Copilot to actually help generate this app with OpenAI. And we're going through and we're using managed identities. So we actually took a VM that's running in Azure VMware Solution. We registered it with Arc to create a managed identity, which allows it to talk to the Azure OpenAI service securely, right? So the Azure OpenAI service will only talk to that specific VM via its managed identity. Again, not having to use network security. You can use it with network security. It's not saying do one or either. You could do both. But we're showing that it's a system-assigned managed identity, so you don't have to exchange a secret in there. The system, again, knows how to use and secure managed identities out of the box, one of the benefits of the Azure ecosystem. So we're using Cognitive Services OpenAI service there. So we're addressing that and then utilizing that private resolver to resolve to a 1010 address. So it's a private IP. So it's never touching the Azure public cloud or the internet. So again, 100% private interactions out here. And then we're showing the conditional forwarder in your DNS system to do that resolution, right, with our Azure private DNS service. So again, showing that DNS forwarder going to our private DNS resolver service in the private DNS zones where we create all of our DNS namespaces here. So, and it shows, here's our record list, right? So again, we're resolving to fully private IPs, again, private endpoints. So in the OpenAI Foundry service, we're saying, hey, no internet connectivity is allowed, right? For, again, keeping it 100% private. So again, the DNS configuration, private endpoints, create a virtual NIC for that PaaS service and surface it in a virtual network. So again, it's completely private, not accessible to anyone but you. All right, so now, essentially that's how you can integrate in one way with native Azure services along with AVS. So, what first we're going to do is we're going to assess, we're going to plan, we're going to do a pilot, and we're going to do a migrate. And then from there, once you're in the cloud, that's when we get that continuous modernization cycle going. Assess and plan and pilot, that typically takes 1 to 3 months, depending on how complex your organization is. That migration, typically it's around 100 to 200 virtual machines a week once we get up to speed. We've seen as much as 500 VMs a week if you really need to get the pedal to the metal and get out of your data center. So we've taken you through a whirlwind of Azure VMware Solution. This is the whole tour, Christophe. So there's a lot of cool capabilities. We have a lot of demos out there, aka.ms/AVS demos. These are all click-through demos that you can take and go see kind of how you would do networking, how you would attach Azure NetApp file storage, how you would use HCX to do those migrations, which is really cool. We didn't even get to that today. We had some other sessions out there. I suggest you watch the videos on there, but HCX with stretched networking is the secret sauce that makes this really, really pop and make it successful. We got disaster recovery with multiple services, including SRM, which is now known as Live Migrate, and we can modernize. Now, also, right, here's a good one. You want to take a picture of this and go to the Azure VMware Solution Learn Challenge out there. So again, it's going to help you kind of learn and get integrated into the AVS solution, figure out how to best use it for your ecosystem. And then also, if you like us, or even if you don't, please go out to the session evals and give us some feedback. We always appreciate that very much. And I want to thank everyone. And
you forgot the $500
oh my gosh,
gift card contest thing. That's
you want to win $500? Give us some feedback on storage, right? We want your opinion. on how we shape the future of Azure storage. We have a lot of storage offerings out there, and your feedback is critical.
And just to close, we have 30 seconds, right?
Yes.
That's what we learned with Scott over these like five last years, right?
Yes.
Is a VMware workload of about like, let's say 1,000 VMs and plus can get really complex to move to an Azure IaaS platform, right? And so complex and long. And so our passion with the AVS solution comes from the fact that we can help that workload move faster to Azure, get you a lot of that value prop already from the first day.
Yes.
And then it's the best platform to modernize these VMware workloads from to get to wherever you want to be in Azure. Right?
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today, and have the great rest of your conference, and safe travels home.